The height of the alpha susceptibility season had arrived again. Hospitals across Chicago were flooded, more than half of the patients being alphas who had contracted the virus and needed injections of synthetic omega pheromones. Liam was running on fumes, finally pulling off his white coat at the end of a grueling shift. He scrubbed his hands raw with antiseptic soap, the clinical smell clinging to his skin. Just as he was about to leave his office, his phone buzzed. It was Caleb. Caleb's voice, usually a composed baritone, was frayed and soft when he asked if Liam had finished for the day. It held a watery, choked quality that was entirely foreign. Liam's stomach tightened with a premonition. His suspicion was confirmed when Caleb admitted that he thought he was showing symptoms of the susceptibility period. It sounded serious. Liam told him he was on his way, immediately turning back to his office. He packed a medical kit with several vials of synthetic omega pheromones and a set of syringes, then hurried to Caleb's apartment. When Caleb opened the door, his eyes and the tip of his nose were red, clear evidence of a recent bout of crying. Liam had never seen Caleb like this, his entire posture radiating a plea for comfort. The moment he saw Liam, fresh tears welled and spilled over, accompanied by a thick, mournful sob. Uncontrollable crying was one of the primary symptoms. Liam found himself momentarily stunned, staring at Caleb's long eyelashes, now dark and clumped with moisture. He had always known Caleb was handsome, but never before had that beauty struck him with such a disarming force. He heard himself murmuring reassurances, telling him not to cry, even though he knew comfort was useless against a biological imperative. An overwhelming sense of tenderness washed over him as he fumbled in his pocket for a pack of tissues. Caleb took them with a mumbled apology, dabbing at his eyes. Liam felt a pang of sympathy for him. Caleb was a man of principle, an alpha who refused to use his phenomenal advantage over omegas. He believed that no one should be ruled by their biology, especially not alphas, who held the physical advantage. But the virus was indiscriminate. To some extent, an alpha's susceptibility period was more volatile than an omega's heat. An omega's cycle was predictable, manageable with suppressants. The alpha virus, however, was like a vicious flu. You never knew when it would strike, and severe cases didn't respond to simple patches. This was Caleb's first time. The man, so cool and self-possessed, was reduced to this vulnerable, weeping state. Worried, Liam reached out to touch Caleb's flushed face, checking his temperature. It was scorching. Instantly, Caleb leaned into the touch, nuzzling his cheek against Liam's cooler palm with a soft sigh. It was a gesture of pure relief, but it made Liam's breath catch. They had been friends for years, close friends, but their interactions had never been this physically intimate. Caleb was too close, his body radiating a palpable heat and tension that set Liam's own nerves on edge. He tried to gently pull his hand away, but Caleb followed the movement, his own hand shooting up to capture Liam's wrist. His eyes held a damp, pleading look that was impossible to resist. Defeated by that look, Liam softened his voice, promising to start the 4-drip to make him feel better soon. Caleb gave a small, pitiful nod that struck another blow to Liam's composure. Inside the master bedroom, Caleb curled up under the covers. Liam unpacked his kit, prepared the synthetic pheromone solution, and carefully slid the needle into a vein on the back of Caleb's hand. He told Caleb to try and sleep, tucking the blanket around his shoulders and assuring him he would stay until the drip was finished. With nothing else to do, Liam settled on the sofa in the living room, the television murmuring in the background. He knew this apartment as well as his own. It was a minimalist loft in River North Caleb had purchased 2 years ago. Liam had helped him pick out most of the furniture, even the decorative art on the walls. Caleb cared little for interior design. His only requirements were that his home be clean, simple, and functional. It was Liam who had argued that a home should be a sanctuary from the chaos of life, prompting Caleb to finally consider the softer details. Caleb was a paradox, a perfectionist in many areas of his life, yet completely indifferent to others. When they went shopping, he would often defer to Liam's taste, pushing him towards salespeople and declaring that if Liam liked it, it was fine. The staff often mistook them for a newlywed couple, offering cheerful blessings for their future, which Caleb never bothered to correct. It was a shrewd, lazy sort of manipulation, a way to avoid both the sales pitches and the effort of making trivial decisions. After Caleb moved in, Liam had become a regular fixture, often coming over for dinner. Caleb's cooking, once merely adequate, had evolved over the years into something remarkable. He could now whip up everything from gourmet burgers to complex French cuisine with ease. Liam, who had no talent or passion for cooking, considered these meals a necessary rescue for his long-suffering stomach. After half an hour, Liam went back to the bedroom to check on his patient. The moment he opened the door, he was hit by a wave of aggressive alpha pheromones, a rich, overwhelming scent of sandalwood that was so potent even he, a beta, could feel its weight in the air. He frowned. The synthetic omega pheromones should have calmed the reaction, not intensified it. Caleb was still on the bed, his face slick with sweat and tears. He was biting down hard on his lip, but pained whimpers still escaped. He seemed to sense Liam's approach and his eyes fluttered open. Liam felt his forehead again, asking how he felt. Caleb's response was a single, breathy word that sounded more like a plea than a statement. Miserable. Confused, Liam turned to go back to the living room to check the vials he'd brought. But Caleb's hand shot out, gripping his arm with surprising strength. He begged Liam not to leave, his voice laced with an unconscious desperation. He was in too much pain. Liam promised he was just going to check the medicine, and the grip on his arm finally loosened. Back in the living room, one look at his medical kit made Liam's heart sink. He had grabbed the low-concentration doses. Caleb was a high-grade alpha. These were practically useless for him. It had to be the new interns at the hospital. He had told them 100 times to organize the pheromones by concentration, but they were careless. In his rush to get to Caleb, he hadn't double-checked. There was no other choice. He had to go back to the hospital. He returned to the bedroom to explain, but as he reached the doorway, Caleb pulled the door open from the inside. Liam collided with him, stumbling into a wall of heat that was startling in its intensity. Before Liam could get the words out about grabbing the wrong medicine, he felt a powerful shove. His back hit the door, but a sharp pain to his head was averted by Caleb's hand cushioning the impact. An instant later, a shadow fell over him. Liam's eyes widened. Caleb, his friend of a decade, was pressing him against the door, kissing him. It was a clumsy, frantic kiss, driven by pure instinct. The heat of his breath was scorching, creating the illusion that Liam's own lips were burning. For a long moment, Liam's mind went blank. He only snapped back to reality when he felt Caleb's mouth move from his lips to his neck, seeking the gland there. But Liam was a beta. His scent gland was a vestigial organ, undeveloped. He couldn't release the soothing pheromones Caleb's body craved. A sudden, sharp frustration cut through his shock. He struggled, pushing with all his might, and finally broke Caleb's hold. Caleb braced one hand against the door, the other still resting on Liam's waist. He buried his face in Liam's shoulder, his breathing ragged and heavy. Liam knew he was suffering and didn't push him away completely. He just asked quietly if Caleb could let him go now. Caleb took a step back, putting distance between them. He apologized, his voice still soft and his eyes filled with a flicker of fear. He was afraid Liam was angry. Tears, unbidden, welled up again. Liam sighed internally. It was impossible to be angry with Caleb in this state. He explained that he needed to go back to the hospital for a stronger concentration of medicine and asked Caleb to wait for him. Caleb looked at him with a profound, lingering gaze and whispered his agreement. Liam found himself using a gentle, placating tone he'd never used with his friend before, promising he would be back quickly. Soon after, with the high-concentration pheromones administered, Caleb's symptoms began to subside. Once he was sleeping peacefully, Liam let himself out of the apartment. For many days after that night, there was almost no contact between them. The last message on their chat log was from the morning after the incident. Caleb had sent another text apologizing. Liam replied that it was fine, that susceptibility periods caused a loss of control, and told him not to worry about it. But Caleb didn't reach out again. He was probably still mortified. They had been friends for so long, and he had crossed a line. Knowing Caleb, he was likely feeling worse about it than Liam was. So Liam gave him space, not wanting to inadvertently remind him of that night. That weekend, Liam went to a reunion. It was organized by Chris, a guy from his college debate team. Chris had moved out of state after graduation and was back in town for business. He'd called up a few of the old members who still lived in the city for dinner. Caleb had also been on the team. He had been their captain, which was how he and Liam had first met. Liam asked Chris if Caleb was coming. Chris said he hadn't called their captain yet, but that Liam was his first call and absolutely had to be there. Liam came, but Caleb did not. He couldn't know if Caleb was avoiding him or if he was genuinely, as he'd claimed, too busy to make it. No one else was surprised. The captain was never one for big social gatherings. Even back in school, he rarely joined their parties. When he couldn't get out of it, he would sit quietly, never singing at karaoke, just watching everyone else have fun. Someone at the table remarked that Liam was probably the only one who was ever really close to their captain. All eyes turned to him. Liam hesitated, saying that he felt Caleb was nice to everyone and wasn't as quiet as they made him out to be. Another friend countered that Caleb only ever spoke at length when he was coaching debate strategy or prepping for a competition, and even then it was purely professional. If you had a question about an argument, he'd give you his full attention. But if you tried to get into his personal life, you'd hit a wall. Someone laughed, saying they always wondered why a guy like Caleb joined debate in the first place, guessing that maybe he used up his entire quota of words on the stage. Liam felt a strange sense of disconnect. Was that really Caleb? After all these years, Caleb had become such an integral part of his life that he'd forgotten what he was like at the beginning. He tried to remember. His first impression of Caleb had been, naturally, one of awe. The Caleb of today was always in tailored suits, projecting an air of elite professionalism. But the college version of Caleb had been different. He'd worn his hair longer than most guys, sometimes tied back in a small, low knot. It gave his striking features an androgynous quality, leading many, including Liam, to initially mistake him for an Omega. But beyond his delicate looks, Caleb had none of an Omega's typical fragility. Liam recalled a time they were crossing the street, deep in conversation. He hadn't noticed a car speeding through a red light, heading straight for them. In a flash, Caleb's expression hardened. The next second, a strong arm wrapped around Liam's waist, lifting him clean off the ground and pulling him back several steps. Liam wasn't particularly heavy, but he was tall. For Caleb to lift him with one arm was astonishing. After Caleb set him down, Liam's heart was pounding. He didn't know if it was from the near miss with the car or from the sudden, potent scent of Caleb's pheromones. It wasn't faint. It was a powerful, undeniable presence. Normally, an alpha scent was subtle unless they were using a suppressant patch. It only flared like that during moments of intense emotion. At the time, Caleb had pressed a hand to the back of his neck, apologizing and explaining that his suppressant patch must have lost its effectiveness in the heat. Liam had attributed it to the sweltering weather and the adrenaline spike from the incident, assuming it was an alpha's defensive instincts kicking in. Liam? Hey, Liam? The voices at the dinner table pulled him from his memories. He looked up, a bit lost. They were just gossiping, one of them said, asking how he and the infamous Ice Prince Caleb had become so close in the first place. Liam explained that they had just added each other on a messaging app, started chatting, and then began grabbing meals or playing basketball together, the way any friendship develops. He remembered now. Caleb had been the one to ask for his contact information after a debate tournament. At first, their conversations were all about debate. Caleb would send him links to compelling matches for them to analyze. Then one day, he messaged Liam, saying he'd heard the food at the medical school cafeteria was excellent and asked if Liam would take him. He ended up loving it and started showing up every few days to eat with Liam. It was Caleb who had initiated their basketball games, too. Their respective college teams had faced off in a tournament, and afterward, Caleb told Liam he was a good player and started inviting him to the court. Sometimes Caleb would bring a sketchbook. After playing for a while, he'd sit on the sidelines and draw. Liam never knew what he was drawing. Caleb always closed the sketchbook as he approached. When Liam asked, he'd just say he was doodling. Once, Liam joked, asking if Caleb was drawing him. Caleb had turned, a slow smile spreading across his face, and said, "Yes." That had silenced Liam's questions immediately. Even thinking back to the very beginning, Liam couldn't recall the cold, distant Caleb his friends described. Their friendship had deepened through these small, everyday moments, a steady, mutual progression. He had never felt that Caleb was unapproachable, a block of ice masquerading behind a polite smile. As the conversation continued to revolve around their absent captain, Liam finally spoke up in his defense, insisting he wasn't as formidable as they were making him out to be. He was actually very easy to get along with once you knew him. A collective look of disbelief went around the table. The consensus was clear. The hard part was getting to know him in the first place. After dinner, the group decided to hit a bar. Amid the boisterous energy, Chris tried calling Caleb again. He told him it was a rare get-together and they were heading out for drinks, asking if he could join them later. The tone of the conversation suggested it was a long shot. After hanging up, Chris shrugged at the group, confirming Caleb was stuck working. He'd said he might stop by if they were still out when he finished, but no one held their breath. They all assumed it was a polite excuse, so everyone was surprised when Caleb actually appeared. It was nearly midnight when he pushed open the door to the loud, crowded downtown bar. The rest of the group was scattered, singing along to the music, playing darts, or clustered in conversation. No one noticed him at first. Liam stood up immediately, calling his name. The music seemed to dip for a moment as others turned to see. Bathed in the shifting, colored lights of the bar, Caleb's fine-boned features seemed even more defined. Liam was struck by a sudden, sharp realization that it felt like he hadn't seen him in a very long time. Caleb apologized for being late, explaining that work had been unavoidable. His eyes found Liam's and held them for a beat. Chris clapped him on the shoulder, saying it was just good that he came. Soon, Caleb was surrounded by the most boisterous members of their old team, who insisted he catch up by downing several drinks in quick succession. He finally managed to break away and took the empty seat next to Liam. As soon as he sat down, Caleb leaned back against the booth, loosening his tie with a weary hand. Liam asked him if he had eaten dinner. The bar was too loud. Caleb leaned in, asking him what he'd said. Liam had to move closer, his lips almost brushing Caleb's ear, to repeat the question. He felt Caleb's body go rigid for a moment before he slowly shook his head. Liam wasn't surprised. Caleb was like that. When he got absorbed in work, he forgot to eat. Liam scanned the cluttered table and pushed a small plate of untouched appetizers toward him, suggesting he eat something. Caleb showed little interest, but, for Liam's sake, ate a few pieces. Watching the subtle movement of his lips as he chewed, Liam was blindsided by a vivid, unwelcome memory of their softness and warmth from that night. He quickly looked away, pretending to be engrossed in the chaotic scene around him, trying to mask his sudden unease. It was strange. He felt guilty, like a pervert who had suddenly started coveting his best friend. A warm breath tickled his ear. Liam. He turned to find himself looking directly into Caleb's mesmerizing eyes. Caleb was now leaning in close, just as Liam had done moments before. Liam swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. Caleb asked if he had been drinking. Liam shook his head, explaining that he avoided alcohol because of his work as a surgeon. Caleb's voice was a low murmur against his ear as he confessed he'd had too much to drink and couldn't drive. He asked if Liam could take him home. The warmth of his breath was making Liam's ear itch, and he rubbed it self-consciously as he agreed. A small, pleased smile curved Caleb's lips. This was strange. So strange. Why did the memory of that kiss keep resurfacing? Why did he keep thinking of Caleb's pleading eyes, his soft, tear-choked voice, the way he had begged for help? He had assumed Caleb would be the one unable to move past that night. But Caleb seemed perfectly at ease. The one who couldn't let it go was him. He was going insane. He poured himself several glasses of water and drank them all in rapid succession. When the night finally ended, Caleb, who rarely attended such gatherings, was predictably intoxicated from the endless rounds of toasts. Liam drove him home. After helping him into the passenger seat, he leaned over to fasten his seatbelt. Just as he clicked it into place and began to pull away, Caleb's hand shot out and gripped his tightly. His eyes, which had been closed, opened. They were hazy with alcohol, yet seemed to hold a deep, tender focus as he looked at Liam. He murmured Liam's name, a questioning note in his voice. Liam confirmed it was him, and only then did Caleb seem to relax, releasing his hand and closing his eyes again. The drive was silent. Liam assumed Caleb had fallen asleep and concentrated on the road. But when he pulled into the underground garage of Caleb's building and killed the engine, he realized Caleb had been awake the whole time, turned on his side and simply watching him. The look in his eyes was so gentle it made Liam's heart race. He leaned closer, asking softly if he was okay. Caleb said he wasn't. Liam sighed, chiding him for coming out so late when he was already exhausted from work. Caleb looked down, his voice low and laced with something that sounded like hurt. He said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. It was an almost petulant complaint. Liam pointed out that Caleb was the one who hadn't been in touch. Caleb's retort was even more plaintive, asking why Liam couldn't have contacted him. Liam couldn't help but laugh. It was such a childish exchange, a clear product of the alcohol dulling their wits. He told him they should go upstairs instead of talking in the car. He locked the car and helped Caleb out. Though Caleb wasn't stumbling drunk, he was unsteady on his feet, and Liam had to support him. Once they were inside, Liam guided him to the sofa and turned to get him some water from the fridge. But Caleb wouldn't let him go. He grabbed Liam's arm and pulled. Caught off balance, Liam tumbled onto the couch, landing half on top of him. Seemingly oblivious to their awkward position, Caleb looked up at him, his eyes bleary, and asked if Liam was still angry with him. Liam struggled to get up, but Caleb's grip was surprisingly strong. His face felt hot with embarrassment as he urged Caleb to let him go. Caleb persisted, his question more insistent. Was he still angry? Liam gave up. He said he wasn't angry, that he had never been angry with him, and asked again to be let go. Caleb seemed not to hear. He continued, his voice thick with emotion, explaining that he had been terrified of Liam's anger. He was afraid Liam would never want to speak to him again, and the thought of it made him even more afraid to reach out. He confessed that he thought about him every day. When they were apart, he said, his heart felt like it had stopped beating. He took Liam's hand and pressed it against his own chest. Under Liam's palm, Caleb's heart began to beat faster, a frantic rhythm. The air grew thick with the scent of sandalwood. Liam's own voice trembled when he told Caleb he was drunk. Caleb agreed. He was drunk, and that's why he was going to tell him a secret. Liam told him he didn't want to know. But Caleb continued, admitting that while he was sorry for the kiss, he didn't regret it. He pleaded with Liam not to think he had taken advantage of his susceptibility period. He wanted, Caleb. Liam's voice was sharp. Stop. Just stop talking. Let me go. The shout seemed to stun Caleb into silence. The beautiful eyes Liam had always admired were suddenly filled with confusion and hurt. He released his grip. Liam scrambled off him and fled the apartment without another word. The sound of the door slamming shut behind him echoed his own frantic heartbeat. Perhaps he had used too much force. He had never imagined Caleb could have feelings for him. Caleb was an alpha and he was a beta. How could an alpha love a beta? Alphas were destined to be with omegas. Their pheromones drew them together. It was biology and instinct no one could fight. Liam's own family was a traditional beta household. His father was a male beta, his mother a female beta. Their relationship was stable and calm. Although Liam had never met anyone who stirred his heart enough to consider romance or marriage, he had always assumed that if he were to marry one day, it would be to a female beta. He had never questioned it. Another month passed, and their relationship plunged into a deep freeze. This time, it wasn't a mutual silence. Caleb called and texted frequently, saying he wanted to talk in person. Clearly, he remembered everything from his drunken confession. But Liam never replied. His mind was a mess. What could he possibly say? He didn't want to lose Caleb as a friend, but he couldn't imagine them as a couple. He was afraid of the confession he knew was coming. So he procrastinated, putting it off with no idea how this would end. Fortunately, his work was demanding. The constant flow of patients, consultations, and surgeries left little time for his mind to wander. One day, he was in his clinic, updating patient records on his computer. He called the next number without looking at the name on the screen. He didn't realize who it was until Caleb sat down in the chair opposite him. Liam froze for a second. Caleb greeted him quietly. Dr. Myers. Liam forced his gaze back to the computer screen, adopting a brisk, professional tone. He asked what was wrong. Caleb's voice was gentle. He asked if getting sick was now the only way he could get to see him. Liam's jaw tightened. He said that if Caleb wasn't unwell, he shouldn't be taking up time from other patients. Caleb gave a bitter smile, assuring him he wouldn't do that. He truly felt unwell. When Liam asked for his symptoms, Caleb described an abnormal fluctuation in his pheromones, a constant feeling of being overheated, and severe insomnia that was beginning to affect his daily life. Liam found himself trapped between concern and a stubborn refusal to show it. He kept his eyes on the monitor, typing out the clinical notes as Caleb spoke. To his CR, Caleb didn't press him about the unanswered calls and messages. After a thorough inquiry, Liam ordered a series of tests. An hour later, the results came back. They showed that the pheromone concentration in Caleb's system was dangerously high. Liam stared at the report, his lips pressed into a thin line, saying nothing for a long time. Caleb asked if it was serious. Liam finally looked at him. He explained that with pheromone levels this high, Caleb might need to consider finding an omega. His voice was flat. He elaborated that as an adult alpha, if he remained unbonded, his pheromones would continue to build up internally with no release. This accumulation could lead to a loss of control in various aspects of his life. Caleb asked if there were any other options. Liam said there was. He could schedule a pheromone extraction procedure. The procedure was minor, he explained, but as a doctor, he had to warn Caleb that it was incredibly painful and not a sustainable long-term solution. He argued that alpha and omega biology was designed to be complementary, so why fight against instinct? Caleb countered that Liam knew he wasn't one to be controlled by biology. Liam clarified that he wasn't suggesting Caleb find just any omega, but one he could love, who would love him in return. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? But you know who I love, Caleb said softly. The clinic room fell silent, the only sound the hum of the printer. Liam handed the printed order form to Caleb. He said he needed to call the next patient. Caleb didn't take the paper. When Liam looked up, Caleb was watching him, his expression filled with a sorrow that made Liam's chest ache. He asked, his voice low and steady, if Liam would still recommend he find an omega, even knowing who he loved, even if he was willing to endure the pain of the extractions. Liam bit the inside of his cheek hard. Finally, he gave a single, firm nod. Yes. As your doctor, that is my recommendation. All right. In an instant, Caleb's expression became almost remote. He took the form from Liam's outstretched hand. I'll take your advice, doctor. Caleb said he would take his advice, but Liam never expected to see it happen so quickly. He saw him at the mall with an omega, their intimacy unmistakable. Liam had just finished his shift and had made a detour to pick up a piece of jewelry his mother had ordered from a department store. The moment he stepped through the doors, a blast of Arctic air conditioning raising goosebumps on his arms, he saw them. It seemed that every time he saw Caleb now, it felt like an eternity had passed between their meetings. Before, they saw each other almost daily. Caleb saw him too. Liam forced a smile and offered a greeting. Caleb only gave him a curt nod. It was the omega at his side who was more effusive, greeting Liam cheerfully and prompting Caleb for an introduction. Caleb's introduction was perfunctory. Liam, a friend. This is Leo. Oh, so you're Liam. The omega, Leo, suddenly became animated, linking his arm through Caleb's. His voice took on a flirtatious lilt. Caleb has told me so much about you. Thanks for always taking such good care of him. It felt like a clear declaration of ownership. Liam didn't know how to respond. Caleb shot an annoyed glance at the omega clinging to his arm but didn't shake him off. The sight made Liam's teeth ache. He quickly made his excuses and walked away. Yet, after a few steps, he couldn't resist looking back. Leo was chattering away, bright and energetic, while Caleb wore an expression of profound exasperation. Then, incredibly, Caleb rolled his eyes at him. It was shocking. Caleb was always so conscious of his image. He would never make such a face unless he was with someone he was incredibly close to. They must be very close, then. To be able to bring out such a lively, unguarded reaction from Caleb in such a short time, they must be a perfect match. The encounter drove all thoughts of his mother's jewelry from his mind. After leaving them, he went straight to the parking garage and drove home. His mother scolded him for being so forgetful, and he just smiled and apologized, promising to go back the next day. He ate dinner, showered, and went to his room. Through the door, he could hear his parents talking. His mother wondered why he was so quiet, asking if something had happened at work. His father told her to let it be, that he was an adult and could handle his own problems. Liam pulled the covers over his head and fell into a restless sleep. He dreamed of Caleb. Specifically, he dreamed he was at Caleb's wedding. Caleb was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his features as striking as ever. Liam couldn't see the face of the person standing beside him at the altar, but he could see the gentle smile Caleb gave them. In the dream, Liam walked up to congratulate him. Caleb offered a polite, distant smile in return. He was the cold, reserved person everyone else described, his voice formal as he said thank you. Felt wrong. Weren't they best friends? But Caleb's attention had already moved on. Liam sat through the ceremony, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. The next morning, he was in the break room at the hospital, filling a mug with hot water. A colleague was making coffee, and the aroma instantly reminded Liam of Caleb, who was a coffee aficionado. He had a small coffee bar set up in a corner of his home. Later, a tea set had appeared next to the espresso machine, and boxes of tea leaves sat beside the various coffee beans. Liam had once asked him why he bothered buying tea when he never drank it. Caleb had replied that it was nice to have for guests. Skeptical, knowing Caleb had few friends, Liam had pressed, asking what guests. Caleb had looked at him directly. "There's one here right now, isn't there?" When Liam had joked that he was just a guest, Caleb had poured him a cup, the fragrant steam rising between them. He had smiled and said the tea was there only for him, asking if that was special enough. Thinking about it now, a sense of melancholy settled over him. Of course, the tea was for him. Over the years, Caleb's feelings had been there all along, woven into the fabric of their friendship. It was he who had been too dense to see it. And now that he finally understood, that unique place he held in Caleb's life was gone. Caleb had found his omega. Dr. Myers. A colleague's sharp voice snapped him back to the present. "Your water is overflowing." He fumbled with the mug, scalding his fingers as hot water sloshed over the side. His colleague asked with concern what was wrong with him lately, noting he always seemed preoccupied. Rinsing his hand under cold water, Liam brushed it off, blaming it on fatigue from their busy schedule. The colleague commented that they all thought he had gotten into a fight with his handsome friend, Caleb. They hadn't seen him visit recently, and Liam was no longer constantly checking his phone on his breaks. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Before, there was always a message from Caleb waiting for him when he had a free moment. Now there was only silence. Everything had changed since that night. He forced a weak smile and offered a simple explanation. "He's been busy." Later that morning, the department head walked into the office with a new colleague in tow. It was Leo. He grinned at Liam. "Liam, surprise. We're co-workers now." Of all the cruel coincidences in the world, Leo was the brilliant, overseas-educated doctor their chief had been boasting about for months. The chief beamed, pleased that they already knew each other, and tasked Liam with showing the newcomer around. From that moment on, Leo stuck to him like glue, even squeezing in beside him during lunch in the crowded cafeteria. Liam was losing his mind. The man never stopped talking. How could someone as quiet as Caleb stand him? Or was this the fabled opposites attract phenomenon? You wanted the chicken leg, right? Here. Liam finally snapped, pushing the last piece of chicken from his own tray onto Leo's. Can you please just eat now? Leo had been delivering a lengthy monologue about the tragedy of missing out on the last chicken leg. Leo's face lit up with gratitude. You're the best, Liam. No wonder Caleb liked you. Liam choked on his food, coughing violently. Leo knew about that. Had his constant presence been a mission to gather intelligence on the enemy? Leo rushed to hand him water and pat his back. Liam waved him off, gasping that he'd just swallowed a chili flake. Leo looked at him, puzzled by his extreme reaction. He then said reassuringly that it was all in the past. Caleb had told him he didn't like Liam anymore. Thanks for letting me know, Liam said, his voice flat as he returned to his meal. Leo watched him from across the table, his expression serious. He asked if hearing that made Liam sad. Even a little bit? He pinched his thumb and forefinger together to illustrate. This man had to be insane. Liam forced a smile, asking why he would be sad. He should be happy that his best friend had found love. But Leo insisted he had seen a flicker of disappointment in Liam's eyes. He leaned in conspiratorially, promising that Liam could tell him if he liked Caleb. He would keep it a secret. It was official. Liam was losing his mind for even engaging in this conversation. Thanks to Leo, encounters with Caleb became frequent again, as Caleb often came to pick Leo up from work. One evening, when Liam's car was restricted from driving, he was walking to the subway station. Caleb's car screeched to a halt beside him. The passenger window rolled down to reveal Leo's cherubic face. He asked why Liam wasn't driving and told him to get in, saying Caleb could give him a ride home. Liam started to refuse, but from the driver's seat, Caleb's voice cut in. Get in. It's on the way. The back door lock clicked open. To refuse again would feel petty, given their long friendship. So he got in. He regretted it within 10 minutes. Listening to Leo and Caleb chat with an easy familiarity about things both known and unknown to him was like sitting on pins and needles. After they dropped Leo off, the atmosphere in the car became thick with tension. Liam glanced at the rearview mirror and his eyes met Caleb's. The small mirror framed his beautiful eyes, and Liam's heart gave a violent thump. He quickly looked away. Trying to break the silence, he commented jokingly that Leo must be just as talkative with him, that his ears hadn't had a moment of peace since Leo joined their department. Caleb replied coolly that Leo was like that. The more you engaged, the more he talked. He advised Liam to just ignore him, and he would eventually quiet down. The tone, though dismissive, held a note of indulgence. A quiet moment passed before Liam forced a small laugh. He said it was probably a good thing. Caleb was too quiet and needed someone to liven things up. As Caleb started to respond, Liam cut him off, pointing to the traffic jam ahead and saying he would get out there. He couldn't stand being in the car a moment longer. The car had already stopped. Caleb turned to look at him from the driver's seat. Liam offered him a small smile. Caleb, we're still good friends, right? He thought he saw Caleb's expression darken for a fraction of a second. Of course, Caleb replied. He would say that, Liam knew. But some things could never go back to the way they were. The air in the car suddenly felt stifling, and a tightness constricted his chest. He quickly opened the door and got out. He regretted it all. If he hadn't brought the wrong medicine that night, if he hadn't lingered at Caleb's apartment after he got drunk, none of this would have happened. Caleb never would have kissed him, and he never would have glimpsed the true nature of Caleb's feelings. He had never thought he could lose Caleb, but now it felt like he was about to. Standing under the brilliant glow of the setting sun, He tilted his head back and let out a long, heavy breath. A month after Leo started, the department head decided it was finally time for a proper welcome dinner. At Leo's insistence, the group ended up at an outdoor barbecue joint. In the relaxed atmosphere, the chief gave everyone permission to have a few drinks. Liam, already in a low mood, didn't hesitate. He opened a beer and drank by himself while watching Leo charm the rest of the table. Despite his oddities, Leo was a good person, a bright presence that brought energy wherever he went. Suddenly, he heard a colleague teasing Leo, asking him how things were going with Dr. Hawk. Wait, Dr. Hawk? As in a romantic how are things going? Liam looked sharply at Leo, who for the first time showed a hint of shyness. He mumbled that nothing was really happening yet, that it was a work in progress. The table erupted in teasing, everyone agreeing that his blush meant he was close to succeeding. Hold on, Liam interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise. You mean to tell me Leo is pursuing Dr. Hawk? One of his co-workers looked at him in disbelief. Liam, do you even work at this hospital? The entire inpatient department knows Leo is after Hawk. He genuinely didn't know. He never paid attention to hospital gossip. So this meant that Leo had been openly two-timing, right in front of him, the one person who knew about him and Caleb. Fury simmered in him. He glared at Leo, who met his gaze and then quickly looked away, a clear sign of guilt. He decided to hold his tongue for the sake of their colleagues, but resolved to confront Leo privately later. Unfortunately, his alcohol tolerance was terrible. After just a few beers, the world started to spin. He didn't even remember when the party ended. The next day was Saturday. He woke up in Caleb's house. Even in his hungover state, he recognized the guest room immediately. He figured Caleb must have picked up Leo last night and found him drunk, bringing him back as well. Had he ever confronted Leo? He rubbed his temples, trying to piece the night together. A fragmented, horrifying memory surfaced. He was on Caleb's back, drunkenly pleading with him not to be with Leo. Caleb had turned his head slightly and asked why. He's too loud. He had slurred. Then Caleb had chuckled and asked who he should be with instead. Me, I guess, he'd mumbled, nuzzling his face into Caleb's shoulder. What do I do, Caleb? I think I kind of like you. He grabbed his hair in despair. What had he done? No matter how much of a scoundrel Leo was, he was still supposedly with Caleb. How could he have said those things? Liam? Leo's head popped into the doorway. You're awake. Breakfast is ready. Liam saw his damp hair and realized he had just showered here. The implication of their relationship sent a fresh wave of despair through him. He threw off the covers, mumbled that he wasn't hungry, and bolted from the room. In the living room, Caleb was sitting calmly on the sofa, watching something on his phone. He looked up as Liam emerged, a cheerful smile on his face. Morning, Liam. Liam had never wanted the ground to swallow him more. He managed a stiff good morning and a goodbye and headed for the door. You went too far. A furious, high-pitched scream that was unmistakably his own blasted from somewhere nearby. He froze, turning mechanically to see the sound was coming from Caleb's phone. His voice, hoarse with disbelief, came out in a croak. Caleb, what are you watching? Caleb held up the phone. Want to see? The next few minutes were the most humiliating of his life. On the screen, a very drunk version of himself was clinging to a lamppost, shouting nonsensically. Leo, you're a monster. A beast. How could you? Caleb is the best. The best person in the whole world. You bring that Hawk person here right now. I want to see what he has that Caleb doesn't. Oh, Caleb, the video. Liam started sobbing. How could you hurt him like that? I'm going to serve justice tonight. The culprit who filmed this disaster, Leo, could be heard cackling in the background. In the video, Leo's voice chimed in. Hey Liam, if Caleb is so great, why don't you like him? Video Liam wailed, still hugging the lamppost. It's too late. Everything is too late. His crying intensified. Caleb, I think I really do like you. A pause. No, I think I like you a lot. Another wail. What do I do? Am I already heartbroken before I've even been in a relationship? The video ended on another peal of laughter from Leo. Liam stood frozen, completely catatonic. Leo slipped past him. Well, I'll let you two talk. I'm heading out. Like a malfunctioning robot, Liam turned to follow him. Right, you two talk. I'll be going too. Caleb grabbed his arm, raising an eyebrow. If you leave, who am I supposed to talk to? Leo had already vanished. The embarrassment was so acute it felt like it could bring him to tears. He sniffled. Caleb took his shoulders and turned him around to face him, his voice gentle. Why are you crying? I'm not crying, he insisted, then felt compelled to apologize. Caleb, I'm sorry last night I'm sorry, Liam. Caleb's apology cut him off. Liam looked up, confused. Caleb's gaze was tender. I should have explained sooner. I didn't know you were hurting so much because of me and Leo. His brain struggled to catch up. Explain what? Leo isn't my Omega, Caleb said. He's my cousin. He reminded Liam of the cousin he was close to, the one who had been studying abroad. Liam remembered. He'd heard Caleb on the phone with him back in college, but had never met him. Caleb explained that Leo was always getting into mischief. When he found out that Liam hadn't responded to his feelings, he'd cooked up a scheme to pretend to be his Omega to see if it would make Liam jealous. Caleb said he had tried to explain once, but then Liam had asked if they were still friends, and it made him think Liam didn't care enough to know the truth. I'm sorry, Liam. I'm the one who made you sad. He wasn't crying before, but hearing Caleb's earnest apology made his nose sting. It was so foolish. He was the coward, the one who ran away, the one who answered Caleb's feelings with silence. Caleb had never even confronted him about it. And here he was apologizing so carefully. He was too good. A sudden, overwhelming urge to hug him washed over Liam. And he knew with a comforting certainty that Caleb wouldn't push him away. He took a step forward and wrapped his arms tightly around him.
I'm sorry, Caleb.
It was my fault. I was too stubborn to admit it, but if you were really with an Omega, I think it would have destroyed me. I dreamed you got married, and at your wedding you didn't even smile at me. I guess I was just too slow to realize. Please don't be mad at M. Caleb's mouth on his silenced him. His mind went fuzzy, but this time he didn't pull away. Caleb's eyes were closed, his kiss full of a focused intensity. Liam watched the gentle curve of his long, dark lashes against his cheek. A profound softness bloomed in his chest, warm and overwhelming. It was the 10th year since they had met. They had started as friends. Now they were becoming something more.